Something good to know from First Bank of Sea Isle City. We have all of today's innovative banking products just like the big banks, but we offer something they can't. A personal community focus. Let's get you started with Bill Pay. You save time when you pay your bills online. It's fast, easy, and convenient. First Bank of Sea Isle City. A community bank that delivers more for you every day. Personal service, today's technology, from the people who truly care. Learn more at firstbankseaisle.com.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is South Jersey Sports Leader, 97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
And he scored!
Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Josh Hennig.
With the 31st pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Jihad Campbell, linebacker, Alabama.
A starter during his final 2 seasons in Tuscaloosa, he played in 34 games that included 21 starts. That led to him becoming a first-team All-SEC selection as he led the Alabama defense in tackles with 117, as well as tackles for loss. The versatility of Campbell really shined during his final season in Alabama, as he also was an effective pass rusher, as he had a team-high 5 sacks, and that included rushing the passer 23% of the time, which was up from his 19% in 2023. Campbell has the potential to be a franchise centerpiece as a Mike linebacker on the next level.
First voice you heard was NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell last night here on 97.3 ESPN, officially announcing Jihad Campbell was the Eagles' first-round pick. The second voice you heard on 97.3 ESPN also last night was ESPN NFL analyst Jordan Reed's player profile. If you would have read my article on 973ESPN.com, you would have known that this guy was one of the top guys on the Eagles draft board. And Howie Roseman only confirmed that last night when he spoke to the media.
This was a top 10 player on our board. We do not have any long-term concerns with his health. You know, we look at the draft as a long-term opportunity for our team. We have a lot of confidence this guy's going to be here and play at a really high level for a long time. And so when you're in a draft and you're picking at the end of the first round, you have an opportunity to get a top 10 player at your board, a guy who can affect the quarterback, a guy who can affect the passing game. You know, for us, it was a no-brainer. Local kid, great character.
So, Eagle fans, how are you feeling today? The Eagles draft a linebacker for the first time since 1979. Jerry Robinson, the last time the Eagles drafted a linebacker. Let's talk about it here and also get you ready for the second round of the NFL draft. 609-403-0973 is the text board. We're also on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. And, of course, you catch the show, as always, check out the Ocean Casino Resort Studios. Josh Hennig live in the studio. Let's get into it. Jihad Campbell, let me know how you guys are feeling less than 24 hours from the Eagles trading up one spot to get a linebacker. And this was one of those moves where I think for the average fan, they were unsure if they would ever live long enough to see the Eagles draft a linebacker in the first round. It's been a position the organization for, I want to say, the last 30 years, probably the Jeffrey Lurie era of owning the team. The Eagles organization does not have a splendid history of investing resources in the linebacker position or even acquiring good linebackers, right? You know, they've acquired linebackers in the draft over the years, but Barry Gardner turned out to be a nobody. And other guys like, Tahani Jones and Takeo Spikes, they got them when they were basically not the players they once were when the Eagles signed them. So this is legitimately one of the first times the Eagles have invested draft resources into a legit player who can be a day one starter. And listen, as I said, if you would have read my article on 97.3 ESPN.com, if you would have been listening to me here on 97.3 ESPN, I've been telling you guys, what are the Eagles going to do in the draft? I told you, number one, it would be defense. This organization, okay, all the research I did, everything I looked into, there was a 80% or higher likelihood they were going defense no matter what. But it's not because of player need. It's because the Eagles value these defensive players more than many of the offensive players in this year's draft. This is a deep, deep, deep class for defensive linemen, linebacker, and more. This is not a deep draft class when it comes to running back, receiver, and it's a very weak draft with quarterback. And we'll touch on that coming up a little bit later in the hour. Because I know for a lot of the national media, they've been talking about one specific player. But let's get into the Eagles here, because Philadelphia said, we look at this draft class as a draft class full of great defensive talent. So who else are you going to grab to talk about defensive talent than Eagles defensive coordinator Vic Fangio? And Howie Roseman explained Jihad Campbell is the type of player that Vic Fangio likes to have on his defense.
Vic does a tremendous job with getting guys who have pass rush ability to be versatile players like that. And I think what's really fun is that those guys who have that versatility, who can go out on the edge and get pressure as a rusher, and he's got speed, he's got power as an edge rusher, he was trained as an edge rusher, and then he's got the versatility to play off the ball and blitz from depth and play in space, in pass coverage, as an off-ball linebacker.
Couple of interesting points there from Howie Roseman. Number one, he says he has training as a edge rusher, right? So for those who don't know, Campbell was actually a linebacker slash pass rusher coming out of high school. By the way, Timber Creek High School, South Jersey guy, local guy. Another cool side to all this. But as a player, he is very versatile. And that's what I was telling you guys last night and all week long. The Eagles want versatile players. They want guys who are not one-dimensional. Campbell fits that to a T. Of course, the other reason why you go out and get a player like Campbell, as Howie Roseman explains, is you can't draft for need. Do the Eagles still need defensive line help? Yes, they need pass rush. They need depth. Do they need safety? Do they need corner depth? Yes and yes. But you can never overlook a player or a position just because, for whatever reason, that might have an alignment. And frankly, I thought the questions about Nakobe Dean were ignorant. And if I can just call out the media out there, and I'm going to preface this by saying there's a lot of good people who cover the Eagles. I know a lot of these guys. I know they're hardworking. I know they're very good at what they do. But the people who kept asserting that Campbell was brought in because there's something wrong with Nakobe Dean or he's coming to take Nakobe Dean's job is a very ignorant and very, it's ignorant and ignorant, for those who know, you know, kind of statement, because what you're inferring is that the Eagles are bailing on a player that they have invested resources in when there's been no evidence to that. And Howie Roseman responded to those kind of questions by explaining that they're not drafting Campbell to replace anyone. They were drafting him because he was the best player available.
We had a top 10 talent on our board who we loved the player and we loved the versatility. And, you know, for us, that was it. That was really it. You know, it wasn't about we start drafting for need or we start turning down top 10 players when we're picking in the 30s. it's not going to be good for our football team.
And, of course, the question is, well, why then did you trade up one spot to get that guy? Well, Howie asserted last night, there's reporting that's come out over the last 24 hours. There were other teams watching Jihad Campbell drop. They wanted the player too. The Eagles said, we're going to go get him. And former NFL executive and now ESPN NFL insider Mike Tannenbaum says the trade up for Campbell by Howie Roseman was the right move.
Being opportunistic, whether they had to give up a fifth-round pick is really immaterial at this point. We don't have access to the medical information, but I'm sure they feel like it's going to be okay. He's obviously productive. He's tough. So this was a smart move by a really good organization.
Now, some of you Eagle fans may be saying, what medical are you talking about? What is this medical thing you're referring to? Well, for those who don't know, Jihad Campbell during the offseason has had labrum surgery, okay? So he sustained a shoulder injury near the end of his final year at Alabama. And there was a lot of speculation about, well, why did he wait so long to get this surgery done, right? Typically, when you sustain an injury in college, you try to get the surgery done as soon as possible so you are available for teams for workouts and for interviews and for training and then for rookie OTAs and training camp. But Campbell purposely went out of his way to delay this procedure. Why? ESPN's Chris Carlin explains the story behind why Jihad Campbell put off his shoulder surgery for months. And I think this story should tell you everything you need to know about why Campbell was the perfect pick for the Philadelphia Eagles.
In a time now where we see so many players at the end of the year, and understandably so, opt out of bowl games and decide not to play and get ready. Here's a young man who knew that he needed shoulder surgery. His team did not make the college football playoff. They were playing against Michigan. And he went out there and still played in the game knowing he needed surgery because he did not want to leave his teammates in the lurch. Speaking to the character of Jihad Campbell.
Isn't that the kind of player you Eagle fans want? A guy who says, I'm not going to have surgery yet. I'm going to go out there and fight for my team. Oh, wait, we just saw Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson do the same thing on the way to the Eagles winning Super Bowl 59, okay? This is why Howie Roseman said what he said almost 2 months ago now, and Howie was forced to, quote-unquote, clarify his statements because some people in the media tried to manipulate what he said and turn it into something that it wasn't. When Howie Roseman told Todd McShay on Todd McShay's podcast that I want to have people of quality character in an organization, and he said, I never want to bring my kids or my family into a locker room and say, yeah, avoid that guy over there. And people try to make a whole thing out of it. Be it the Philadelphia Eagles are one of the only teams in the NFL that has had no players with any off-the-field legal trouble, legal issues, accusations in 8 years. And Jihad Campbell fits the profile to a perfect level. And for all the people who are like, well, you could have picked Mike Green. Well, Mike Green's got off the field issues. For all the people who were saying, why didn't you trade up for a tight end? Well, there's other tight ends available in this draft, which we will get to in a bit. Well, why didn't you get a safety? Well, Justin Simmons is still a free agent out there. This guy is one of the best talents in this draft. NFL Network's Brian Baldinger, Baldy Breakdowns. Give it to me.
The best linebacker in this draft is Jihad Campbell. It's not even close. He's going to find the ball carrier, no matter where he lines up. Okay? Like, he's got an elite skill set. Game-changing plays. We saw Zach Vaughn do that a bunch last year. This is what good inside linebackers do. They trust their speed, which is plenty. 4.52 at 243 pounds.
I mean, you just hear the numbers. I mean, somewhere Billy Schweim should be salivating from the locker room here on 97.3 ESPN. You know, Billy always talks about, you know, big guys beat up on little guys. Well, Billy, there's your big guy. 6'3", almost 250, runs a 4.5 40-yard dash. Power, speed, athleticism. Tell me how you Eagle fans are feeling today. Let's get to you guys right now. 609-403-0973. Your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Of course, we are live as always on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Jeff from Ocean City chimes in to the conversation. He says, I'd like to see the Eagles get more defense tonight. Also bring Dallas Goedert back for next season. Well, the Goddard thing we'll get to in a second. There is still some players who are available. So again, the draft intel article I gave to you guys a couple days ago at 973ESPN.com. A couple of the players who are still left for the Eagles to get include TJ Sanders, the defensive lineman. Now, he's technically a defensive tackle, okay? But the reason why I'm calling it a defensive lineman is because South Carolina did utilize him as a player who can be up and down the line, okay? They did utilize him as a player who could play a little bit of defensive end, but he's primarily an interior defensive lineman, all right? And Sanders is a guy who was a key player for a very, very talented South Carolina team this past year that played very good defense for most of the year. And he averaged 1 tackle per loss in his final 15 college football games. One of the Eagles' pre-draft process guys, okay? Sanders is still available. Another guy who is still out there, the Eagles have interest in, would be Landon Jackson, defensive end from Arkansas, 6'6" edge rusher. He averaged a half a sack per game in his final 24 college games. So he's very productive. He has been described as a day one starter if the Eagles draft him, right? And then the local guy is still out there. Donovan Azaraku. Okay, this is a guy who beauty is in the eye of the beholder kind of situation. Because I have heard draft analysts describe him anywhere from a first-round prospect to a third-round pick. So he has a very wide range of opinions on him. Of course, Williamstown High School, the all-time single-season sack record at Boston College. Consensus All-American. He was a team captain. So he's got the leadership, he's got the production, he's got the local ties, and he's a phenomenal athlete. The only question with him is there is some concerns about, one, is he a bit of a one-trick pony? We know the Eagles like versatility, but do they take a guy who has great upside and great talent maybe in the second or third round when they know maybe he can't do everything else that other players can do? You know, while a guy like Sanders and Jackson are both very good at being 3-down players, is Ezaraku a 3-down player? So something to keep an eye on. And by the way, to Jeff, your question about the tight end. Now, I think personally that I don't want to see the Eagles trade Goddard, but there is an issue for Philadelphia they have to deal with. And we will hit on this before we get to more of your comments and questions. The Eagles are trying to save money, not salary cap money. They're trying to save cash because they've spent a lot of cash already on Juergens and Saquon Barkley and others. They've been saving a lot of money on the cap. Now they got to save a little extra money on the cash side. Trading Goddard saves them more in the cash department than it does in the cap department, but the cash is more important to the Eagles than the cap. So that's your little breakdown of how the numbers work. I think it'll be a clear sign if the Eagles take one of the tight ends, Mason Taylor of LSU, Harold Fannin Jr. of Bowling Green, Elijah Arroyo of Miami. It doesn't mean they're not going to keep the other guys. It just means that I think Goddard is pretty much going to be traded. And I know for a lot of Eagle fans, they're questioning why would you do that. Again, it's about balancing the books. And realistically, Goddard is the age right now that Zach Ertz was and they drafted Dallas Goedert. The difference is Goddard has an extensive injury history. He can't stay healthy, while Zach Ertz was healthy. So while Zach Ertz got to hang around for a couple more years in Philadelphia in an Eagles uniform and was paired with Goddard, the Eagles might be saying we might need to replace Goddard before he becomes too expensive for a guy who can't get on the field. All right, we got more messages to get to you on the other side. Keep them coming in. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank Seattle. And as always, we are live on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. More on the Eagles and the 2025 NFL Draft next on 97.3 ESPN.
97.3 ESPN has teamed up with Seize the Deal for incredible weekly offers from some fantastic local restaurants. Here's this week's big deal.
Get a $50 gift card, good for use at Provenza Restaurant and Event Center on Wellington Avenue in Ventnor for just $25.
This great deal is on sale now at seizethedeal.com. Hurry, chances are this deal will sell quickly. For more info on this great deal, go to seizethedeal.com.
As a fan, you know all the important sports cliches. And when you save money by bundling your home and auto with Progressive, you can get out there and give it 110%, even though that's mathematically impossible. And remember, failure is not an option. Well, it's always an option, just not a good one. But you're not worried because you've got ice in your veins. You're on fire. How can both of those things be true at the same time? Well, that's between you and your doctor. So get out there and leave it all on the field. Leave what? Who cares? Just leave it and save with a bundle from Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers. Not available in all states or situations.
Point! Hey, you okay? You don't normally miss those shots.
I just haven't been as regular lately, and it's making me feel sluggish.
You should try Metamucil. It's been a game changer for me. Metamucil's plant-based psyllium fiber helps trap and remove the waste that weighs you down. Ace, you're moving better than you were last week.
Definitely.
Metamucil keeps you moving. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Learn more at Metamucil.com.
O'Reilly. Get one free set of Brake Best brake pads when you buy 2 Brake Best Select brake rotors. You can upgrade to Brake Best Select brake pads for just $10 more. Or upgrade to Brake Best Select Pro or Import Direct pads for just $20 more. Visit your local O'Reilly Auto Parts. Offer in-store only. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
This is the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. Phillies and Cubs this afternoon from Wrigley Field. Philadelphia looking to snap a 3-game losing skid. They started Taijuan Walker, while the Cubs went with Colin Ray. This begins a 3-game series, also continues their 6-game road trip. Phillies coming off a sweep by the New York Mets at Citi Field. The NBA continuing its draft with rounds 2 and 3 tonight. The Eagles picking 32nd in both the second and third round. Philadelphia moved up one spot in the first round Thursday night in a trade with Kansas City, picking 31st, where they took linebacker Jihad Campbell. Tennessee Titans with the number 1 pick went with Miami quarterback Cam Ward. Two-way star Travis Hunter from Colorado went number 2 to Jacksonville, and Abdul Carter, linebacker from Penn State, went number 3 to the New York Giants. Progressive Insurance, bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
It happens more than you think. A customer wants, no needs the goods and services your business offers. No matter how hard they try, they can't find you, but they find your competitor right there at the top of the results page.
And even if they do find your website, when they click, it's like a ghost town.
Hello?
Outdated, not compelling, and perhaps worse, it has information that's not accurate.
Y2K?
But how do you fix that? At Town Square Interactive, we have the tools to help you maximize your online presence. Just go to mylocalcustomers.com and start by getting a free local customer analysis.
This online tool will show you just how many customers in your area you could be reaching. To get in front of those customers, we will build a premium website for your business.
One that shows up well in web searches and converts website clicks into phone calls, appointments, and foot traffic.
It's simple, it's fast, and it's affordable. Go to mylocalcustomers.com and get started by getting your free local customer analysis today.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. This weekend's weather is a mixed bag, occasionally rainy but mild tonight into Saturday, sunny but blustery on Sunday. Scattered rain rolls in tonight. Could be rumbles of thunder and localized downpours out there, low of 62. One more push of showers and thunderstorms around midday tomorrow with clouds and sun and breezy conditions, high 74. Mostly sunny and windy on Sunday, high 64. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
Every choice you make matters. Whether you're dining out, grabbing takeout from your favorite local spot, or shopping for that perfect outfit at a neighborhood boutique, you're giving back to your community. It's not just about supporting businesses, it's about strengthening connections and keeping your community vibrant. Town Square Media South Jersey is proud to shine a spotlight on local businesses that make our area special.
Health Source Acupuncture Integrated Medicine, helping people with today's most challenging chronic and complex health conditions. HealthSourceAcupuncture.com. Broadleys is your local source for plumbing, heating, and air conditioning service and installation since 1911. Call 609-390-3907 or visit broadleys.net. First Bank of Sea Isle, Cape May County's community bank. Hot Bagels, your local bagel store. Always fresh, always delicious. Storybookland. Create your own story at Storybookland.
Thank you for supporting your local businesses from Town Square Media, South Jersey.
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Character is not an issue, and he just delivers on the field day in, day out. The ultimate team guy. Again, Howie Roseman strikes again. Bottom line, in the conversation. You get, again, Jordan Reed's 11th ranked player at 31. That's your typical Philadelphia Eagles right now.
That was Ian Fitzsimmons last night on ESPN Radio's coverage of the NFL Draft. It's Howie Roseman strikes again. It'll be interesting to see what Howie Roseman does tonight. Before we get there, let's check in with you guys to say 609-403-0973. The DMs into 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Let's get to George in Summers Point before we get to the messages coming in on the DMs on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. George from Summers Point says, hey, Josh, I think you greatly summarized the Eagles draft pick from last night. As you stated, it shows how good of a GM Howie is. He thinks out every last detail of any move before he executes it. As stated before, he is more reflective than reactionary, and the Eagles are very, very lucky to have him at the position in the organization that he holds. I would say he is the envy of many teams in the NFL. Well, George, Summers Point, the last part is very true, because remember, we did talk to Rob Maaddi the other day, and he was reporting from Green Bay, Wisconsin, and he talked about that very thing, that a lot of teams look at Howie Roseman, and I think part of the reason why, like, the Jags hired James Gladstone, right? Or when the Browns hired Andrew Berry away from the Philadelphia Eagles organization, or when, Andy Weidel used to work here, now he's in Pittsburgh. I think there is a little bit of Howie envy going on out there. This is where Rob Maaddi told me the other day, live from Green Bay at the NFL Draft, about how other teams are basically copycatting the one and only Howie Roseman.
The way Howie runs his draft board, the way he executes picks, and also has the aggressive nature to move up when he wants to, to move around, to add more picks later. I think teams are trying to emulate that because it is a copycat league, and then you try and emulate who does the best job. And Howie now is become known for being not just a salary cap expert, but a guy who can build a Super Bowl championship roster.
And you mentioned that the Eagles are lucky to have him in the position that he's in. And I think that if it wasn't for what happened to Chip Kelly, right, where Chip Kelly basically kicked him out of the front office, banished him, and he had to go on his own road of self-discovery. If Howie doesn't go through that process from 2014 to 2016, the Eagles probably don't have 2 championships in an 8-year period and a 3rd Super Bowl appearance, because Howie basically being humbled, being kicked to the curb, having to reinvent himself, that created the dynamic of having a guy who values character, who values drafting the best player, don't draft need. It's those ideas that came from Howie going into purgatory, being put into limbo. It brought the Eagles to this point where you can get a guy like Jahad Campbell this year and Quinyon Mitchell last year and Jalen Carter the year before, because you're drafting 3 players for 3 very different reasons, but they all had the same moniker over their head. Best player available. And that is the key to so much of this when it comes to the Eagles. And, it's interesting that, Jordan, so much point you bring up also, it's the idea that Howie thought out every detail. And when you said that, it reminded me of when Howie said this last night, because Howie talked about part of the reason why they drafted Jahad Campbell was because of 1, Vic Fangio, and 2, the competition they face every year right now in the NFC. Take a listen.
Vic, with the success that he's had, understanding that he's got a vision for the player, but we've seen what he can do with guys with this kind of skill set. And you just look around the league, the teams that we have to get through to get where we want to go, they have fast, explosive quarterbacks, players in their backfield that we got to bring down at all levels of our defense. And we need a tremendous amount of front 7 players to contain those guys.
And it's that understanding that's important. It's the understanding that, 1, who is my competition? I need players who can match up with my competition. You don't think when that pick comes up, and the way the Eagles are building their draft board, right? All the names I've already mentioned to you, aside from Jahad Campbell, TJ Sanders, Landon Jackson, Donovan Ezeraku, that these guys are on the Eagles list, okay? They're on the list in part because of who the competition is. How about that guy in Washington, Jaden Daniels? When Dak Prescott and the Cowboys are healthy, they're dangerous, okay? Whether you like the Cowboys or not, they are a dangerous football team offensively. If the Giants ever get their head out of the sand, can you imagine how hard it is going to be if they get a real quarterback with Malik Neighbors running around out there? Of course it's going to be dangerous. Look around the rest of the NFL, so the NFC. Brock Purdy, Matthew Stafford, they're pretty good. If you go in a playoff run, you're going to see at least 1 of that 2 of those guys. Jared Goff is still playing at a high level. Imagine if Ben Johnson gets the full potential of Caleb Williams out of him. That is a quarterback who is a game wrecker. Jordan Love is only going to keep getting better in Green Bay. I really believe that. The job that Matt LaFleur, has done as the Packers head coach, you got to give that dude a ton of credit. They took the greatest diamond in the rough, a guy that people like myself looked at coming out of college and were like, I want to stay away from that guy. Matt LaFleur and the Packers said, no, give me that trash. I'm going to turn it into gold. And they absolutely did. You have a guy who has led all of college football in interceptions one year in Jordan Love, and they turned him into an efficient, competitive quarterback who is capable of leading a team to a playoff run. And look at the rest of the NFC, okay? Look at the NFC South. Baker Mayfield, that is a guy who has shown you he can win playoff games. Look, what if Kellen Moore does a good job with the Saints? Then what happens? How dangerous could they be? If the Falcons ever get it figured out, how dangerous could they be? And Bryce Young, the first half of last year, looked like the worst quarterback in football, and now he looks like he might be developing into something under Dave Canales. So, again, you go through the entire NFC and realize even the Vikings. The Vikings, if J.J. McCarthy's as good as Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings organization think he is, that's a dangerous offense. So you need these defensive players. You need difference makers out there. Let's get some of more of your guys' thoughts and comments out there. Over on the YouTube channel, BADA, that's how I'm going to label you, my man, out there. You say, Josh, what do you think about getting Shamar Turner, the defensive tackle out of Texas A&M with the next pick? Don't hate it. My only problem with Turner is, one, from everything I understand, he is not as high on the Eagles' board as some other guys are. So for those who out there don't know the whole story, and I'm glad that you brought this name up, Shamar Turner. We need to explain something for the general audience out there really quick, okay? And it's a twofold issue. Number one, knowing your personnel and your organization is a huge part of being successful. The Eagles say we're not going to draft players who don't fit our scheme. That's why I don't understand all this love that's out there for Amenahu, the safety from South Carolina. He doesn't fit Vic Fangio's scheme. That is not the kind of player that Fangio typically goes for or would want to have. So why are we putting him as a guy the Eagles should be interested in? I just don't understand it. There's a lot of players in this draft who I think you have to look at. Do they fit what the Eagles do, right? So let's go to specifically Shamar Turner. Who is Shamar Turner? Well, he's part of a Texas A&M team that is very, 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 very controversial right now. Because that Texas A&M team was one of the more underachieving teams the last couple of years in college football. And Turner was part of that conversation. Turner was a guy who has a lot of talent, a lot of ability, but like a lot of his teammates, he didn't have the production on the field. So now we're projecting a guy who was inconsistent into our scheme. Now, I personally think Turner, if you had to rank all of the Texas A&M guys, he's probably the one with the most upside. You know, I know the Eagles have interest in Nick Scordon, the defensive end from Texas A&M. You know, there was speculation about Stewart from Texas A&M. Turner is interesting. I don't hate it. I just think the Eagles seem to value, for whatever reason, TJ Sanders higher than him. Again, I'm just going off of the information we have out there. It appears for Philadelphia, if you had to ask them how they have these guys rated, I think right now it's Sanders, then Turner, and then, depending on who you ask, either Collins or Robinson. Okay, Collins is the big guy from Texas, and then Robinson is the freak athlete from Nebraska. And there's also some people out there who are curious about Darius Alexander. I'm just not 100% sure if he is the best fit for a Fangio scheme, because there's people who are wondering, is Alexander a one-trick pony? The Eagles are trying to get away from one-trick pony. They're trying to get away from guys who are one-dimensional players. It's like, for example, and I don't know if he's listening out there, so I'm going to talk about him anyway. So one of the reasons why everybody around here loves Nick Earnshaw, Nick's Nuggets. Okay, you all know him as Nick Nuggets on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. Nick Earnshaw is a versatile prospect. He's the kind of guy like the Jahad Campbells, okay? Like the TJ Sanders. He is a guy who can do multiple things. He is somebody who can do, you need him on the microphone, you need him to edit audio, you need him to produce a show, you need him to run a board, you need him to help with setup. He can do pretty much anything in this business. There's very few of people like me and Nick Earnshaw. So when you have versatile people who can do a multitude of things, who are able to do all of those needs at a high level, okay, it creates a dynamic where you are going to value putting them into your system more than others. So the question about a Darius Alexander is, he's not versatile. He is not a guy who can do multiple things. The question with Shamar Turner is, we know he's capable of doing multiple things, but he hasn't always done it. And I think that's why if the Eagles do pick him, it's probably because they have him highly rated. I'm getting also a question about Omar Norman Lott, the guy from Tennessee. I personally like him. I think that Omar Norman Lott is a very good player. The only problem with him is he's an undersized defensive tackle. So if you go back and watch his tape, a lot of his success was because he basically is a powerhouse in terms of his explosion, but not in terms of his physical upside, okay? He needs to put on probably about another 10 pounds of muscle, okay? He has great hands. He is great at shedding blocks at the college level, but he's going to be facing at the NFL level some bigger guys. I think if you put about 10, 15 more pounds of muscle on him, he's probably going to be a guy that you want. There's a reason why there's a lot of players rated ahead of him. You know, I'm looking at let me pull up one of these rankings. So on ESPN's ranking of the best available players left, all right, where do they have him? Let's scroll down here. I'm just curious where they have him because I know what I've heard and I know what I've read, but I'm wondering now. Okay, so he is the 34th best player left on the board. And if I'm looking at guys that we know the Eagles are interested in, Landon Jackson of Arkansas is ahead of him. Nick Scordon of Texas A&M is ahead of him. Who else is ahead of Omar Norman Lott, who the Eagles like? Donovan Azaraku is rated ahead of him. TJ Sanders from South Carolina is rated ahead of him. Elijah Arroyo, the tight end, is rated ahead of him. I'm trying to see who else. And by the way, Kevin Winston of Penn State's rated ahead of him. So I think the problem is about Omar Norman Lott is he's a guy that's going to need to put on some weight. He needs to put on about 10, 15 pounds of muscle. He might be a guy that you get like in the third round, right? He's a guy that maybe the Eagles, when they pick in the third, maybe that's a guy that can kind of, maybe maneuver around the board. They still have 3 fifth-round picks, right? For those who don't know, the breakdown of the Eagles draft right now, they have 1 second, 1 third, 1 fourth, 3 fifth round picks. So is it a scenario where you say, do you let the draft come to you in the second and then move up in the third? Because, for example, you could take your third round pick, just to give a scenario. You could take your third round pick, combine it with one of your fifth round picks, move up in the third round. So now you're getting 2 players who are left in that top 40 remaining type players. So the Eagles can go get a guy like Omar Norman Lott if he maybe is still available at a certain point. Now, I can't speak for every team because I don't know everybody's draft board, but there's certainly a possibility that he is going to be available at a certain point. I'm also getting the comment here on the DMs that says, I feel like Jihad Campbell is going to be to the Eagles what Frankie Louvu is to Washington. Frankly, I think that's understating what Jihad can be. I would go back to what Brian Baldinger said about how, this is a guy who he's more than just a very good player. He is somebody who Brian Baldinger said he thinks he's the best linebacker in the draft. That's better than Frankie Louvu. If you're the 11th best prospect, according to Jordan Reed, that's better than Frankie Louvu. Howie Roseman said this is a guy who we rated as a top 10 prospect on our board. That's saying a lot. You're basically telling the world that you think this guy is going to be way better than Frankie Louvu. And look, I'm not going to be the guy to make the comps. Okay, I think the comps get us all in trouble. Howie Roseman had to save Nick Sirianni from that last night. But I do think that if you want to know what Jihad Campbell is, he is, to me, a combination of Peter Boulware and Zach Thomas. Maybe not even Zach Thomas, maybe like Patrick Willis. But he's a combination of a great blitzer from the linebacker position who also could be a sideline-to-sideline tackling machine. And to me, I think Frankie Louvu, the way they use him in Washington, is more of like a wild card player. I think Jihad is actually, his potential is beyond Frankie Louvu. But I appreciate the comparison. All right, we'll get to more of your guys' thoughts and comments. Who do you want to see the Eagles draft today? There's a lot of guys who are going to be available, a lot of great talent. We'll get into who some of the best available is. And, of course, the draft round 2 begins after 7 p.m. You can hear all the coverage right here on your home for the Eagles and the NFL, 97.3 ESPN. And you can listen streaming on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, which is free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City.
It's Phillies baseball on 97.3 ESPN.
Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN Radio. It's a showdown at Wrigley Field.
Fly ball well hit right field. It is gone. A solo shot for Harper.
Bryce Harper and the Philadelphia Phillies go head-to-head with Kyle Tucker and the Chicago Cubs.
And it is gone! Kyle Tucker.
Listen to Sunday Night Baseball on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 6 p.m.
97.3 ESPN has teamed up with Seize the Deal for incredible weekly offers from some fantastic local restaurants. Here's this week's big deal.
Get a $50 gift card, good for use at Provenza Restaurant and Event Center on Wellington Avenue in Ventnor for just $25.
This great deal is on sale now at seizethedeal.com. Hurry, chances are this deal will sell quickly. For more info on this great deal, go to seizethedeal.com.
Are you getting hit hard by low trade offers?
Ouch! That was a blindside. That's a personal foul.
Don't get blindsided by low trade offers. Bring any trade to Matt Platt Kia. Just because you don't see your new Kia on the lot doesn't mean you can't be driving it home tomorrow. Select from hundreds of new and certified Kias.
It's gotta be a Matt Platt Kia.
Matt Platt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 and Toms River.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams 4-day super sale and get 40% off paints and stains April 25th through the 28th. With prices starting at $29.39, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your bedroom, living room, or home office, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust Febreze car vent clips, featuring 3 distinct intensity settings, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing. Which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs.
Picking up, Oscar!
When you're hiring, have you ever felt like you're missing out on meeting truly great candidates for your roles? It seems impossible to find them, but they have to be out there somewhere, right? Well, they're not hard to find when you know where to go. and that place is ZipRecruiter. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day. And because these people are actively looking for jobs just like yours, it's easy to find the right person right away. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. But if you're not using ZipRecruiter, you're missing out. So see what it's like when the impossible is easy. When you go to ZipRecruiter.com/radio right now to try ZipRecruiter for free. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio. Never miss out on great candidates with ZipRecruiter.
Right now, the Home Depot has spring deals under $20. So no matter what you're working on, the deals are blooming at the Home Depot with savings on plants, flowers, soil, and more. Then light up your outdoor space with Hampton-based string lights. Was $34.97, now only $19.99. And get the grill going with 2 16-pound bags of Kingsford charcoal. Was $19.98, now only $17.88. Don't miss spring deals under $20 now through May 7th at the Home Depot. Subject to availability, valid on select items only.
With GMF financing, qualified buyers excludes Traverse and Corvette excludes prior sales.
Why is Bennett Chevrolet the area's most popular dealer? It's simple. Bennett sells new Chevys at the true GM supplier employee prices, not a penny more. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates, saving you up to 20% on your new vehicle. And there's more. Bennett's got available 0% financing, saving you even more money. And there's never any hassles, no haggles, just the best prices you can find. Plus, if you're looking for pre-owned, Bennett's giving you a minimum $10,000 for any trade you can bring. Yes, a minimum 10 grand for any vehicle you can get here. And you guessed it, there's no hassles, no haggles, just a minimum 10 grand for any trade. Savings up to 20% on new vehicles. A minimum $10,000 for any trade towards any pre-owned in stock. And there's never any hassles, no haggles, and no negotiating needed with our non-commissioned sales team. They're paid on your satisfaction. Together, let's drive. Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and on the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
All right, before we get to the prospects, I got to play the audio. So I know for many of you out there, you might have been asleep by the time Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni spoke to the media last night. So one of the members of the media definitely tried to pull a fast one with Nick Sirianni. Trying to get Nick Sirianni, hey, can you give us a player comp for Jahad Campbell, right? Was the question. They were saying, hey, Nick, you guys have a lot of conversations about what players' potential are, what they could and can't be. Can you give us like an idea of what kind of player that you think Jahad Campbell's going to be? This exchange right here is everything you need to know about last night's press conference in a nutshell about the relationship between Howie and Nick. Take a listen to this.
Player comps come up in those meetings. What player comps came up with Campbell?
Yeah, again, but
They're trying to get you.
Yeah.
They're trying to get you.
Go ahead, you want to take it?
Well, no. Because it's funny because we were watching on the NFL Network, and like the first few guys are like Hall of Famer comps, and so it's like we're looking at that, we're going, whoa, those are big shoes to fill. So I think for us, like those are conversations we have with our staff, and that puts coach in a bad spot. So I'm stepping in front.
Howie says, I'm stepping in front of this. I'm not letting him dig himself a hole. That is a professional relationship that is very healthy. That is Howie Roseman saying, I know exactly who my head coach is. I know his strengths and I know his weaknesses. And I'm not going to let him put himself in a bad situation. You got to love Howie for that. I mean, Howie is maybe only 10 years older than Nick Sirianni. And he basically acted like the older brother, the 8 years old older brother. Hey man, let me help you out here, man. Let me step in here for you, brother. That was what that was. Howie saving Nick Sirianni from himself. It was a great moment last night in the draft. All right, before we get out of here, I did want to hit on a couple of the top prospects who are still available. Okay, so I told you guys the Eagles, they love Donovan Azaraku. I've heard and read there's interest in Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo, the tight ends. We'll see if TJ Sanders is still going to be there or not when they're picking. If they stay put in the second round, there's still a chance they can move up. I know a lot of people are curious. There is a chance that Kevin Winston Jr., the safety from Penn State, could be a guy that they go get. But a lot of it depends on the quarterbacks, right? The quarterback question, we are going to get the answer to very quickly. Shedeur Sanders not going in the first round is not that crazy, okay? There were teams that had him as a first-round pick, but there are a lot of reports out there that the teams that rated Shedeur Sanders as a first-round pick are all teams with franchise quarterbacks, okay? That's the report that's out there. So there's a problem then. And I'm not saying this is the team that said it, but I'm just using them as an example. If, let's say there's 4 teams with franchise quarterbacks who all think very highly of Shedeur Sanders. Well, if those 4 teams are the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Bills, and the Ravens, well, of course those teams aren't going to draft Shedeur Sanders. They got franchise quarterbacks. So what we're really finding out is the teams that don't like Shedeur Sanders are not well-run franchises. So now we're learning, okay, wait a minute. If the well-run franchises like Shedeur Sanders, but the franchises that are not as well-run, hello Cleveland Browns, are franchises that maybe have questions about him, maybe those questions need to be questioned. Now look, Shedeur Sanders is not a perfect prospect. I am no way saying that, but I've told you guys for a long time. He was always more of a second-round prospect for me, because I always felt that his potential was more in the Geno Smith, the Drew Brees range than anything else. So what's going to happen in this second round? Shedeur Sanders, Tyler Shuck, Jalen Milroe. Those all are guys who are going to go somewhere in the second round here. How does that push down the rest of the prospects? How does that make other players more available for the Philadelphia Eagles? Find out coming up next here on 97.3 ESPN. Full draft coverage on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Thanks to everybody for listening, all the comments coming in. I will be back Monday night, 6 o'clock, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great one, everybody.
Saturday morning in the locker room with Billy Schwein, former Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Dave Klemick, and producer Danny Ryan join me in the studio. The NFL Draft was Thursday night, and we will examine the Birds' picks through round 2 and preview the final day of the draft. Hour 2, Mr. Negadelphia PJ Corder checks in, brought to you by the Galloway Pool Service. Mr. Negadelphia will opine on the Phillies slide and the Birds' draft. All that and more. It's the locker room with Billy Schwein, Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN.